Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1: The Disturbance on Bond Street. It was a crisp October morning when Hercule Poirot, the celebrated Belgian detective, found himself riding in a handsome cab along Bond Street. The air was sharp but not unpleasant, carrying with it the brisk energy of London at the height of its commercial bustle. Shops gleamed with their polished windows and autumnal displays, clerks hurried in and out with parcels, and the occasional motor car honked impatiently at the slower pace of horse-drawn vehicles. Poirot, as ever, was immaculate. His moustaches, perfectly waxed into their proud, symmetrical arcs, quivered ever so slightly as he leaned back against the leather seat. His gloves, dove grey, soft kid, were freshly pressed, and his bowler hat sat with precision at the proper angle upon his head. Few men could appear so thoroughly at ease while simultaneously alert to every passing detail, but then, Hercule Poirot was not like other men. He was on no case this morning. His intention was merely to take a stroll after calling upon his tailor in Savile Row. He often reminded Hastings, who was abroad at the time, and much missed, that the well-dressed man had already half-conquered life. It is true, mon ami, Poirot would declare, symmetry, order, neatness, they are the foundation not only of fashion but of civilization itself. The cab turned the corner onto Bond Street, and it was then that the atmosphere altered. A murmur of voices, rising above the ordinary clatter of hooves and wheels, made Poirot straighten in his seat. The vehicle drew to an abrupt halt as the cabman pulled up sharply, craning his neck towards a gathering of people near the centre of the street. Poirot paid his fare with customary exactitude, never over, never under, and descended to investigate. At once he perceived the cause of the disturbance. Before the tall facade of Merriweather Co, jewelers, a crowd had gathered. The shop was one of the most respected on Bond Street, its name synonymous with quality and discretion. Yet now its pride was undone. The great display window, known for exhibiting some of the finest gems in Europe, stood shattered. Large shards of glass jutted jaggedly from the frame, while smaller fragments glittered across the pavement like cruel little stars. A constable, broad and red-faced, was doing his best to maintain order, but the onlookers pressed close, eager for gossip. Snippets of conversation reached Poirot's ear as he edged nearer. A smash and grab, I'll warrant it. Daylight robbery, bold as brass. They say it was the Astoria Diamond, gone. Lord help us, it's worth a fortune. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. He bent his head in that courteous manner of his and addressed the constable. If you permit, officer, he said in his precise English, touched with a Gallic flavour, I am Hercule Poirot. Perhaps you have heard of me. The constable blinked, then nodded with sudden recognition. Indeed, sir. Scotland Yard's spoken of you often enough. Well then, if you'd care to step inside, Mr. Merriweather's in a state, I'll tell you that. Poirot inclined his head gravely, and passed through the door, careful to avoid stepping upon the glass. Disorder met him within. Clerks stood whispering in corners, pale-faced and anxious. Customers who had been in the shop at the time hovered uncertainly, some indignant, others trembling. But all eyes turned to a figure at the centre of the room, Mr. Josiah Merriweather, the proprietor. He was a portly man of about 60, with a florid complexion and a bald head upon which perspiration gleamed. In his hand he clutched a white handkerchief, with which he mopped his brow incessantly. My life's work, he cried, on seeing Poirot. My reputation. The Astoria Diamond, gone. Stolen right from under my nose. Poirot stepped closer, his small frame neat and dignified. Calm yourself, Monsieur Merriweather. Nothing is achieved with agitation. Order, method, tranquility, they are what we must cultivate. But you do not understand, sir. Merriweather's voice rose to a high pitch. The Astoria Diamond is not merely any jewel. It was the centerpiece of our collection, valued at £50,000, and entrusted to me by Lord Catterick himself for exhibition. I was to display it for 1 week only. And now, it is gone, vanished. Oh, I shall be ruined, utterly ruined. Poirot's green-grey eyes swept over the scene with a slow and deliberate gaze. The display case, though cracked and broken, remained largely intact. Its lock bore no obvious scratches, and the velvet upon which the Astoria Diamond had rested was dented in the precise shape of the missing gem. The detective noted, too, that most of the glass shards had fallen inward, not outward, a detail that caused his brows to twitch. He turned back to Merriweather. "Permit me one question, monsieur. At what hour was the diamond last observed?" "This very morning, sir. I opened the shop at 9 o'clock, as always. My assistant, Miss Hobbs, prepared the window. She assured me the stone was in its place. At 10:15 I stepped out briefly, only to return and find this dreadful sight." Poirot nodded thoughtfully. He bent low, carefully picking up a sliver of glass with his gloved fingers. "Curious, very curious. One would expect, but let us not hasten." A sharp cry from a corner interrupted him. A young woman, plainly dressed in the modest fashion of a shop assistant, had burst into tears. Her colleagues attempted to comfort her, but she waved them off. "I cannot bear it," she sobbed. "It was I who arranged the diamond this morning. If it has gone, then I am to blame. Oh, Mr. Merriweather, I beg you to believe me, I never touched it after I set it in place." Merriweather groaned. "Compose yourself, Miss Hobbs. We must all answer to the police, and God help us." Poirot approached gently. "Mademoiselle," he said in his courteous tone, "to weep, it helps nothing. You must be brave. You must tell us only what you saw. Exactment, without exaggeration." The girl sniffed, nodding miserably. Poirot gave her a small, reassuring bow before turning once more to survey the room. Already he was constructing, within those famous little grey cells, a picture of the crime. Though blurred at the edges, it promised clarity with patience. "Mon Dieu," he murmured softly to himself, "it is not only the glass that is broken here, but the order, the harmony. Yet truth, she is like a pearl cast into dark waters. One must only look, and look closely." Poirot straightened, tugged at his cuffs, and declared in a calm but firm voice, "Messieurs, mesdames, I beg that no one departs this place. For I believe we are in the presence, at this very moment, of the thief who has stolen the Astoria Diamond." Gasps and exclamations rang out. Poirot remained perfectly composed, his moustaches twitching with satisfaction. Already, the hunt had begun. Chapter 2: The Witnesses Assemble. The air inside Merriweather and Company's inner office was close and heavy, carrying the faint mingling of Polish, velvet, and the unmistakable tang of broken glass that still clung from the showroom. The constable, stout and resolute, had followed Poirot's instruction and ushered all those present at the time of the robbery into this chamber at the rear of the shop. Poirot took his place at the head of the polished mahogany table, where papers, catalogues, and order books had been hastily swept aside to make room. He stood for a moment, tiny hands clasped neatly behind his back, surveying the faces before him as a general might survey his troops. For individuals sat in a row, each betraying unease in their own fashion. Poirot inclined his head with grave courtesy. "My friends," he began in his soft, deliberate tones, "I beg you to understand, this matter is not to be treated as an inconvenience, nor as a mere accident of fortune. A theft has been committed, the theft of a diamond most rare, most celebrated. Yet I tell you this, and mark me well, the thief sits among us at this very table." Gasps rose. Mr. Merriweather gave a moan of protest, his face blotched red, while the young assistant Miss Hobbs covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Colonel Ashworth stiffened indignantly, as though affronted to find himself in such company. Mr. Lionel Drake merely smiled thinly, one corner of his mouth curling with what might have been amusement or contempt. Poirot raised a small white hand. "Patience, Miss Amiss. I accuse no one, not yet. But it is my method, you see. One assembles, one observes, one compares. Order and symmetry, always. In due time, the truth, she emerges like a flower from the bud." He moved a chair delicately and sat, folding his hands before him. "Let us proceed in order, yes? Monsieur Merriweather, as the proprietor, you shall speak first. Relate, if you please, exactly what passed this morning." Mr. Merriweather speaks. The jeweller swallowed hard, dabbing his brow. His voice was tremulous but eager, as if to unburden himself. "It was, as I told you, sir, an ordinary morning. I opened the shop at 9. Miss Hobbs attended to the window, dusting the cases and arranging the displays. She assured me that the Astoria Diamond was placed correctly. A few customers entered thereafter, among them Colonel Ashworth here. Then Mr. Drake appeared. At 10:15 precisely, I stepped out for a short while, merely to post a letter. I was absent no more than 5 minutes. When I returned, calamity! The window was shattered, the diamond gone." Poirot inclined his head. "You left the shop in the charge of Miss Hobbs?" "Indeed." "And the front door, was it locked in your absence?" The jeweller shifted uneasily. No, we remained open. Business must go on." "Just so." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci, monsieur." "Miss Hobbs, the assistant." Poirot turned now to the pale young woman. She was perhaps 20, with fair hair drawn severely back and an earnest, rather pinched expression. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said kindly, "you are agitated. Yet courage, if you please. Tell me in your own words what you observed." Miss Hobbs swallowed. "It is true, sir, I placed the diamond in the case. I dusted the velvet and settled it beneath the lamp, just as Mr. Merriweather instructed. Then I left it. I served 1 or 2 customers, minor purchases, wristwatches, nothing more. Colonel Ashworth was looking at cufflinks. Mr. Drake came in and asked to view certain chains. Everything seemed ordinary. Then Mr. Merriweather went out. I was at the counter when I heard a crash, such a dreadful crash. I looked round and saw the case smashed and the diamond gone. I screamed. Truly, sir, I never touched the stone again after arranging it this morning." Poirot studied her face. The girl's eyes brimmed with sincerity, yet her agitation was excessive. He spoke gently. "Mademoiselle, you are young. Youth trembles easily. But tell me, when you heard this crash, did you see anyone near the case?" She shook her head miserably. "No, sir. Only Colonel Ashworth had just set down an umbrella near the counter. It startled me at the time." Poirot's brows twitched. "An umbrella? Ah, curious. We note it." Colonel Ashworth's indignation. The colonel, a tall, square-jawed man of military bearing, bristled visibly. His moustache, though far less magnificent than Poirot's, twitched with irritation. "Really, sir, this is too much. To suspect a retired officer of His Majesty's Army of common thievery. I was examining cufflinks, as I have already said. I set down my umbrella, yes, but what of it? Surely a man is permitted to carry an umbrella in London in October." Poirot inclined his head. "But naturally, Colonel. And yet, one notices trifles. The umbrella, was it damp? Yet outside there is no rain. The Colonel flushed. I had it with me from earlier this morning. The ground was moist in the park. Poirot made no reply, but his eyes glinted. He leaned forward. You saw nothing of the theft? Nothing at all. I heard the commotion, turned, and there was the broken glass. Frankly, sir, I suspect some vagabond slipped in from the street and snatched it before any of us knew what was happening. These smash-and-grab fellows are daring beyond measure. Poirot lifted a finger. Ah, but the case, it was broken from within, not without. No vagabond, Colonel. The drama, she is domestic. Ashworth scowled but fell silent. Mr. Lionel Drake's cool smile. At last Poirot's gaze rested upon Mr. Drake, who had remained throughout with a faint smile of amusement playing about his lips. He was a tall man, lean, with a sharp nose and a dark moustache carefully trimmed. His clothing was fashionable, though perhaps a trifle flamboyant, and he wore a trace of cologne that lingered faintly in the air. Mr. Drake, Poirot said softly, you honor Merriweather and Company with your presence. A rival, I am told. Yet you came this morning to, how shall we say, inspect. Drake's smile widened. Competition, Monsieur Poirot. One must keep an eye on it. I deal in fine jewels myself. Naturally, I wish to see the Astoria Diamond. A stone of such renown draws business and envy. Alas, I came too late. Poirot studied him with deep attention. Indeed. And while you were here, what did you observe? Nothing beyond what has been described. I admired the diamond, yes, but did not touch it. Then there was a crash, the girl screamed, the Colonel blustered, Merriweather returned in a panic, and the famous Monsieur Poirot arrived to restore order. It is almost a play, is it not? His tone was lightly mocking. Poirot smiled very slightly. A play, yes. And in a play, there is always the villain, n'est-ce pas? Drake chuckled, spreading his hands. Perhaps. But I am no actor, Monsieur Poirot. Merely a businessman. Poirot inclined his head. We shall see, monsieur. We shall see. Poirot's quiet reflections. When the accounts were finished, Poirot rose slowly. He strolled a few paces about the office, his head bent, his hands neatly folded. His little patent leather shoes squeaked faintly upon the floorboards. So, he murmured. Each has spoken. Monsieur Merriweather, anxious yet indignant. Mademoiselle Hobbs, trembling, perhaps too much. Colonel Ashworth, outraged, his umbrella curiously damp. Monsieur Drake, smiling, always smiling, and with the perfume that lingers. For persons, for accounts, for shadows. Yet of them, one alone speaks the truth entire. He turned suddenly, his eyes sharp as knives. My friends, I thank you. For now, I ask only patience. Soon, the little grey cells, they will arrange themselves. And then, the diamond, she will be found. There was silence. The witnesses shifted uneasily. Poirot smoothed his moustache with satisfaction. Already, though none guessed it, the seeds of suspicion had been sown. Chapter 3, A Methodical Inspection. The witnesses had been dismissed for the moment, under the constable's watchful eye, to await further questioning. Poirot, left to himself, moved with precise steps back into the showroom of Merriweather and Company. The broken display case dominated the scene, glass splintered, velvet disturbed, the sense of violation unmistakable. Yet Poirot did not storm about like the yard inspectors, flinging questions in every direction. He preferred stillness. His eyes, small but penetrating, flickered here and there, taking in the tiniest details. He began with the display case. Kneeling delicately, he examined the edges of the frame where the glass had shattered. A tiny gloved finger traced along the line of breakage. "Ah," he murmured softly, "yes, it is as I thought." The shards of glass, scattered like ice across the carpet, lay largely within the case, not without. He bent closer, lifting a sliver with tweezers. Most curious. One imagines, does one not, that a thief smashes from outside, the glass flying inward. Yet here, see, the break radiates outward, as though the blow came from within the case itself. And yet, who could be within? An impossibility, n'est-ce pas? He set the shard down carefully, symmetry restored. Poirot disliked untidiness, even in fragments. Next, he turned his attention to the lock. He peered through a small magnifying lens produced from his pocket. The mechanism bore no scratches consistent with hurried tampering. The latch had been undone, yes, but not forced. The thief had either opened it with the proper key, or with one so perfectly fashioned that the lock yielded without a struggle. Poirot tapped the glass gently with his fingertip. So, the case is broken not for access, but for drama. The thief wishes us to believe in violence, in boldness. But none, he is subtle. He opens, he takes, and then he smashes, afterwards. He straightened, dusting his immaculate knees. His nostrils twitched slightly, and he sniffed the air. A faint fragrance lingered over the case, sharp yet sweet. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Cologne," he said aloud, almost to himself. Not the cologne of cheap youth, no. A rarer scent, sophisticated. Yes, yes, I recognized it earlier. It belongs to Monsieur Drake. A careless thing, to leave behind a signature so distinctive. But Poirot did not linger on that thought. He knew better than to leap too soon. A single scent proved nothing, indeed, it might mislead. He filed it away in those fastidious little grey cells for later consideration. The shop floor. Poirot now surveyed the floor surrounding the case. He crouched low, examining the skirting board. His sharp eyes caught something glinting faintly in the carpet's pile. With utmost delicacy, he plucked it free. "Aha!" he exclaimed softly. It was a tiny chip of diamond, no larger than a pinhead. Not the Astoria Diamond itself, of course, but a fragment. It gleamed, beautifully cut. Poirot turned it over in his palm, smiling faintly. "And what do we conclude, Hein? That a stone was dropped? But this is not the Astoria, too small. Yet why does it lie here, by the board? Was it fallen from another jewel, perhaps? Or placed? We shall see." He continued, noting scuff marks on the carpet near the counter, as though someone had dragged a heavy object a few inches and then stopped. Poirot crouched, fingertips lightly brushing the fibers. An umbrella stand once there, perhaps? Or something set down hurriedly. The Colonel, he admits he placed his umbrella. But the dust, she tells me it is more than a moment's wait. Ah, curious. The door and windows. Poirot moved next to the front entrance. The door latch was clean, the hinges untouched. He bent low, studying the faint trail of dust at the threshold. The line was unbroken. No forced entry, Poirot murmured. The thief, he did not come from without. He was here, already inside. He examined the window too. Though the great display pane had shattered, the smaller side windows were intact, unmarked. Poirot's lips pursed into a line of satisfaction. So, the thief did not smash to seize. He seized, and then he smashed. To create panic, to disguise the subtlety of his method beneath the mask of violence. Yes, it begins to take shape. Poirot's little rituals. Having completed his inspection, Poirot straightened, adjusted his cuffs, and gave a fastidious glance at his patent leather shoes, brushing off a speck of glass dust with his handkerchief. One must never allow disorder, not even in a crime scene. He walked slowly back to the counter, where Merriweather hovered anxiously, watching his every move. "ABN, Monsieur Merriweather," Poirot said gently, "we begin to see the outlines of a picture, though not yet the colors. Permit me to ask, how many keys exist to that case?" "Two, Monsieur Poirot. One in my possession, one kept here in the shop for emergencies." "Both accounted for, I assure you." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "Accounted for, yes? But tell me, who had access this morning?" "Only Miss Hobbs. She holds the spare to polish the case and adjust the display." Poirot nodded. "I see." The constable's interruption. The constable, who had been pacing near the door, interjected with a gruff voice. "Beg pardon, sir, but it seems plain enough to me. One of them fornicked it. That Drake fellow, I'd say. Shifty sort, all cologne and talk. Why not haul him in and be done with it?" Poirot raised his hand in gentle rebuke. "Mon brave, you gallop too fast. You see a shadow and you cry a wolf. But shadows, they deceive. We must be patient. To accuse before we are certain, it is untidy. An Hercule Poirot, he does not permit untidiness." The constable reddened, muttering under his breath, but said no more. Poirot alone with his thoughts. When the room fell quiet once more, Poirot leaned lightly upon the counter, his eyes half closed, his mind whirring in silent calculation. He reviewed each detail. The glass broken from within, not without. The lock unforced, suggesting a key or exact duplicate. The lingering scent of cologne. The umbrella placed oddly, with signs of weight upon the carpet. The stray chip of diamond, unrelated yet near. He spoke softly to himself, in that habit of his, one constructs, yes? One piece, then another, until the pattern is complete. Here we have not only theft but theatre. A play, with actors, each playing his part. But who is the author, the true mastermind? That, we must discover. His moustaches twitched as he smiled faintly. "Ah, the little grey cells, they are content. Already they murmur to me, whispering secrets. But patience, always patience. A subtle clue." Before leaving the room, Poirot made one final sweep. On the counter where Colonel Ashworth had rested his umbrella, Poirot discovered the faintest smear, almost invisible, of clear residue. He touched it delicately with his gloved finger and sniffed. "Glass dust," he murmured. "Yes, but why here, and not elsewhere? Did he lean his umbrella upon shards? Or was the dust already upon it? Interesting, most interesting." Poirot tucked the observation neatly into his mind, straightened his tie, and prepared to rejoin the waiting group. The crime scene, he felt, had spoken. Not in shouts, but in whispers. An Hercule Poirot, master of whispers, would hear every word. Chapter 4, Suspicion Cast Wide. The witnesses filed back into the jeweller's office after a short interval, their expressions a mixture of apprehension, indignation, and fatigue. Outside, the constable continued to keep curious onlookers at bay, while the fractured display window remained boarded temporarily with a sheet of brown paper. Inside, the atmosphere was no less fractured. It was as if a storm had passed through, leaving debris in human form. Poirot sat once more at the head of the table. His hands were neatly folded, his tie was straight. Not a hair of his moustache had shifted, though his eyes gleamed keenly. "My friends," he began softly, "I have looked with attention at the scene of the crime. Certain facts, they have presented themselves. Yet it is the people who interest me more. For jewels, they do not vanish of their own accord. It is always, the human heart which makes them vanish. He let this sentence rest in the silence that followed. Then he said briskly, "We shall speak again, each of us. And this time, I wish to know not only what you saw, but what you think. For it is the psychology that betrays, never the action alone." Mr. Merriweather's anxiety. The jeweller wrung his hands as he sat forward. His voice was pitched high with strain. "I can say no more than I already have, Monsieur Poirot. I was absent but a moment. I returned to find the diamond gone. My reputation is destroyed. Lord Catterick will demand explanations, compensation." Poirot raised a hand. "Come, Monsieur Merriweather. You are a man of business, yes? And business, she is conducted with order. Yet what do I find? That the spare key, she is entrusted to a young assistant. A heavy responsibility for one so inexperienced, is it not?" Merriweather flushed. "Miss Hobbs has been with me for 2 years. She is trustworthy. Besides, one cannot always be at hand oneself." Poirot's voice was gentle. "Indeed, indeed. Yet you left the shop open, and you absent. You risk much. Tell me, is your business flourishing?" The jeweller's eyes flickered, just for a second, and Poirot noticed. "Moderately," Merriweather admitted. "Trade has been difficult. But we are solvent, I assure you." Poirot inclined his head. "Merci. I ask not to wound, only to illuminate. For sometimes, the motive for theft lies not with strangers, but with necessity." The jeweller looked affronted, but Poirot merely smoothed his moustache and turned to the next. Miss Hobbs under scrutiny. The assistant sat rigid in her chair, pale as porcelain. Poirot leaned forward kindly. "Mademoiselle, earlier you spoke of arranging the diamond. Tell me, when you placed it, what were your thoughts? Did you admire it? Did you long for it?" Miss Hobbs's hands trembled in her lap. "It is beautiful, of course. Anyone would admire it. But long for it? No, Monsieur Poirot. Such things are not for the likes of me. I have no fortune. Or she broke off, colouring. Poirot's eyes softened. "And yet, mademoiselle, there was found in your desk drawer a pawn ticket for a diamond ring. That is true, is it not?" The girl gasped. "How did you?" "Oh, yes, it is true. But it was my mother's ring, given to her in happier times. I was obliged to pawn it last month for rent. I swear to you, Monsieur Poirot, it has nothing to do with this dreadful affair." Her voice cracked, and tears welled again. Poirot gave her a small nod. "I believe you speak truth, mademoiselle. Poverty, she tempts, yes, but your distress is too real. Still, one must consider, opportunity, it lay with you. You alone had the spare key." The girl flinched. Poirot made no further comment, letting the suggestion linger like smoke. Colonel Ashworth's defense. Colonel Ashworth, rigid-backed, looked as though he would rather face enemy fire than another question. His umbrella lay against the wall behind him like a silent accuser. "Colonel," Poirot began evenly, "you are a man of honor, of discipline. Yet honor, it is a curious thing. A man may keep it in battle, yet lose it elsewhere. Tell me, your finances, they are secure?" The colonel's jaw clenched. "I have my pension, sir." "It suffices." "Only suffices." Poirot tilted his head. "Forgive me, but your attire, it is of the best. Your club membership, your travels. Such things, they demand more than sufficiency, do they not?" The colonel colored deeply. "I manage my affairs as I see fit, sir." "To imply—" Poirot interrupted smoothly. "And yet, the umbrella. Why damp when no rain has fallen? Why dusted with glass when you claim to have touched nothing? The colonel spluttered, his composure rattled. I set it down, as I said. Perhaps some shards clung to it. As for the dampness, I walked this morning in Hyde Park. There was dew. Poirot gave a little shrug, non-committal. It is possible. Yet the umbrella, she is a curious object. So hollow, so useful for concealment. One imagines many things. The colonel glared, but said nothing further. Mr. Drake's mocking ease. At last, Poirot turned to Lionel Drake, who lounged almost carelessly in his chair, his long fingers drumming lightly upon the armrest. The faint fragrance of cologne seemed to hang about him like a signature. Monsieur Drake, Poirot said, his voice silky, you are amused, perhaps? You smile while others protest. Tell me, why do you smile? Drake's lips curved. Because, Monsieur Poirot, I find it diverting to be treated as a suspect in a melodrama. A diamond disappears, and immediately the rival jeweler must have snatched it. Too obvious, surely? Besides, if I were to steal, would I not wait until I could enjoy the profit? Here I am, still in the room. It is laughable. Poirot regarded him steadily. Obvious, yes. But thieves, they play games. Sometimes the most obvious is the most cunning. And the scent, monsieur, you leave it wherever you go. Cologne of fine quality, OUI, but most distinctive. It lingers near the case. Drake lifted a brow, amused. Perhaps I lean too close. Perhaps the fragrance carried. Are you to convict me of theft on perfume alone, Monsieur Poirot? That would be novel indeed. Poirot gave a thin smile. Non, monsieur. Perfume is but one note in the symphony. Yet it plays its part. You speak with confidence, but I have seen the cuff of your sleeve, frayed, as if caught on something sharp. Perhaps a shard of glass? Or perhaps only wear. Still, I notice. Drake's eyes flickered, just for a moment, before the smooth smile returned. Poirot's pronouncement. The silence stretched, heavy with tension. Each of the four sat rigid in their own discomfort, Merriweather pale, Miss Hobbs tearful, Ashworth scowling, Drake smiling faintly. Poirot rose slowly, every movement measured. My friends, he said, already I know more than you think. Each of you holds a secret, perhaps not the same secret, but a secret nonetheless. Some of those secrets may touch the diamond, some may not. But rest assured, they cannot remain hidden long. For truth, she is like the sun, she cannot be covered forever. He looked at each in turn. Monsieur Merriweather fears ruin. Mademoiselle Hobbs fears suspicion. Colonel Ashworth fears disgrace. Monsieur Drake fears nothing, and that, perhaps, is what condemns him most of all. He bowed slightly. For now, we wait. But remember, Hercule Poirot watches. And when the little grey cells have finished their labour, then. The curtain will rise, and the thief shall stand revealed. The room was silent save for the ticking of the clock. Each face bore guilt of a different hue. Poirot smoothed his moustache, satisfied. He had cast suspicion wide, and now the web was taut. Soon, the truth would be drawn in like a fly. Chapter 5, The First Red Herring. The following morning found Merriweather and company a place of nervous whispers and tight faces. A plain-clothed inspector from Scotland Yard, Inspector Graves, had arrived to lend his authority to the investigation. He was a tall, spare man with a drooping moustache and a manner inclined to brusqueness. Unlike Poirot's fastidious calm, Graves preferred the blunt edge of suspicion. I tell you straight, Poirot, he said, slapping a sheet of paper upon the jeweller's desk, this pawn ticket is damning evidence. Found in Miss Hobbs's drawer, for a diamond ring, no less. She admits to pawning it herself. What clearer proof of financial desperation do we need? Motive and opportunity both. The girl's guilty as sin. Miss Hobbs sat pale and silent, her hands knotted together in her lap. Her eyes, red from weeping, flicked fearfully between Poirot and the inspector. Poirot, seated with his hands neatly clasped, inclined his head gently. Motive, you say, mon cher Graves. An opportunity, OUI. But evidence, it must be considered with order, with balance. A pawn ticket for a small ring, does it equate to theft of the Astoria Diamond, valued at £50,000? Perhaps, perhaps not. Let us not gallop. Graves snorted. You're too soft-hearted, Poirot. The girl's poor, the jewel's priceless, and she had the key. It's open and shut. Poirot's eyes twinkled. My dear Inspector, if only the world were so simple. But human nature, she is never simple. One must examine not only what is obvious, but what is odd. Miss Hobbs's defense. At Poirot's nod, Miss Hobbs spoke, her voice trembling. It is true about the ring, sir. It was my mother's, the last thing she left me. I hated to part with it. But I had no choice. My wages are small, and last month's rent was overdue. I swear to you, I have never touched the Astoria Diamond except to place it in the case that morning. I could never steal something so grand, it would terrify me even to hold it. Graves sneered. That sentiment, not defense. Poverty's motive enough, girl. And who better than you, with the spare key in hand? Poirot leaned forward, his gaze warm but piercing. Mademoiselle, when you placed the diamond, did you observe anything strange about it? Anything unusual? She hesitated, brow furrowed. Only that it caught the light more than usual. It seemed to sparkle so brightly I had to shade my eyes for a moment. I thought it must be the way the lamp was turned. Poirot sat back, stroking his moustache. Interesting, très intéressant. A small remark, yet perhaps significant. Graves rolled his eyes. Significant fiddlesticks. The girl's guilty, and you know it. Merriweather's doubt. Mr. Merriweather, who had been hovering in misery, now spoke with weary distress. Miss Hobbs has been loyal, but the evidence looks black. If she has betrayed me, oh, I cannot bear it. Poirot regarded him coolly. Monsieur Merriweather, loyalty is a strange thing. It may be true, or it may be pretense. Yet you leap too quickly. Recall, the case was broken from within. Would a nervous young woman choose so dramatic a flourish? None. She would act quietly, hoping not to be observed. Merriweather faltered. Perhaps, but who else could it be? Poirot spread his hands delicately. That, monsieur, is what we shall learn. The inspector presses. Inspector Graves was not content. He demanded that Miss Hobbs's rooms be searched. Accompanied by the constable, he departed, leaving Poirot to stroll once more through the showroom. Poirot's mind ticked over, silent but relentless. The pawn ticket, yes, a tempting thread. Yet it was too neat. Too obvious. A poor girl, a valuable jewel, a financial woe. It had the simplicity of a storybook. And real crimes, Poirot knew, rarely followed such tidy lines. A disturbing find. By late afternoon, Graves returned triumphant. He carried a small box. With a flourish, he set it upon the counter and opened it. Inside lay a glittering stone. The Astoria Diamond, Graves declared. Hidden beneath the floorboards of Miss Hobbs's lodgings. Caught red-handed, I'd say. A collective gasp ran through those assembled, Merriweather, Colonel Ashworth, and even Lionel Drake, who raised a brow with amused satisfaction. Miss Hobbs, however, gave a shriek of horror and collapsed into tears. I never saw it before. How could it be there? Graves folded his arms smugly. Because you put it there. And with that, Poirot, your doubts are silenced. But Poirot did not look silenced. He bent low, studying the diamond intently. His eyes gleamed. Mon cher Graves, he said softly, you are quick, but haste, she is the enemy of truth. Look closely. This is not the Astoria Diamond. The inspector scoffed. Nonsense. It's the same size, same cut. What else could it be? Poirot lifted the gem delicately between finger and thumb. A clever imitation, my friend. A paste stone of high quality, yes, but paste nonetheless. Note how the facets are too sharp, the brilliance too even. The true Astoria has a fire within, a depth that no imitation may equal. No, this is but a decoy, planted to deceive. A murmur of astonishment swept through the group. Graves's face darkened. Planted? By whom? He demanded. Poirot's eyes flickered briefly towards Drake, then back again. That, we shall discover. But mark this, someone wishes us to believe in the guilt of poor Miss Hobbs. Someone plays a very dangerous game. The seeds of doubt. The revelation shook the room. Merriweather mopped his brow, muttering of ruin and scandal. Colonel Ashworth shifted uncomfortably, his umbrella leaning against the counter once more like a silent conspirator. Drake, meanwhile, smiled faintly, as if enjoying the theatre. Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but commanding. We see now the hand of cunning. To hide a false diamond in the girl's lodgings, it is too convenient, too theatrical. No thief truly clever would choose so obvious a place. No, the intention was not concealment but accusation. The guilty party seeks to deflect suspicion, to cast blame where it does not belong. His gaze swept across the faces, pausing for a fraction longer upon Drake than the rest. Mark me well, Miss Amos. The thief, he is among us. And he grows bold, bold enough to plant false trails. But he underestimates Hercule Poirot. The little grey cells, they are not so easily deceived. Poirot's quiet comfort. When the inspector had departed, fuming, Poirot lingered beside Miss Hobbs, who sat trembling, her face blotched with tears. Mademoiselle, he said gently, take courage. You are not alone. The truth, she will defend you. Already, I see that you are the victim of a trick, not the author of a crime. She looked at him through tear-swollen eyes. You really believe me innocent, Monsieur Poirot? Poirot's moustaches quivered as he smiled kindly. But of course. You have not the mind for such deception. And in this affair, it is deception, not desperation, that rules. Poirot reflects. That evening, alone in his lodgings, Poirot sat before his fire, sipping a tisane and gazing thoughtfully at the flames. The false diamond, he murmured. The pawn ticket. The umbrella. The perfume. Each is a thread. Some are true, some are false. The trick is to know which is which. And the thief, he plays boldly, but too boldly. In his eagerness to condemn another, he reveals his own hand. He adjusted his cuffs and smiled faintly. Patience. Soon, the curtain shall rise. And then, the applause will be for Hercule Poirot. Chapter 6, Threads of Deception. The morning after the planted diamond had been discovered, Merriweather and Company opened under a cloud of suspicion. Few customers came, but those who did whispered behind gloved hands, casting furtive glances at the boarded display window. The scandal of the missing Astoria Diamond was already spreading along Bond Street. In the back office, Poirot sat with his legs neatly crossed, sipping a small cup of coffee. Inspector Graves stood opposite, restless and irritable, while Mr. Merriweather hovered anxiously by the door. "I tell you, Poirot," Graves said sharply, "the girl's our thief. Fake diamond or not, it was in her rooms. How else did it get there?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Ah, mon cher Graves, you asked the wrong question. Not how else did it get there, but rather why was it placed there? The intention, it was to condemn. Yes, yes, one must look beyond the surface." Graves gave a snort. "You and your psychology. I prefer facts." Poirot smiled indulgently. "But psychology, she is also fact, the fact of human nature. And it is human nature that betrays itself more surely than fingerprints." Poirot's morning circuit. Leaving Graves to his paperwork, Poirot made a slow circuit of the showroom. He examined the boarded window once again, tapping the frame delicately with a fingertip. He bent low, studying the tiny fragments of glass still lodged in the carpet. "Curious," he murmured. "Most curious." He straightened and walked to the counter, inhaling delicately. The faint trace of cologne still lingered, faint, but present. Poirot's nostrils flared. He bent closer, smiling. "So, you cling, do you? Even after days?" At that moment, Colonel Ashworth entered, umbrella in hand. He nodded stiffly. "I came to see if there was any progress. Dash it all, this affair makes one feel most uneasy." Poirot's eyes dropped to the umbrella. "Still damp, mon Colonel?" The Colonel flushed slightly. "I dried it, of course. This blasted weather never helps." Poirot gave a polite nod, but in his eyes was quiet curiosity. He filed the detail away with the rest. Merriweather's quiet confession. Later that afternoon, Poirot found Merriweather alone in his office, head in hands. The jeweller looked up, his face drawn. "Monsieur Poirot, I cannot bear this suspense. My reputation is in tatters. If the diamond is not found, I am ruined." Poirot sat opposite, his gaze calm. "Monsieur, you fear financial ruin very much, do you not? Perhaps you fear it already, even without the diamond." Merriweather's face blanched. "What do you mean?" Poirot leaned forward, voice low. "Your accounts, they are strained, are they not? Business, it is not what it once was. Perhaps you hoped the Astoria would restore your fortunes." The jeweller swallowed. "Yes, it is true. Sales have been poor, and debts are mounting. I thought the Astoria would bring prestige, more clients, perhaps even a buyer for the diamond itself." "Ah," Poirot murmured, "so the jewel, she was more than a display, she was a gamble." He paused, eyes narrowing. "Yet would a man gamble so much only to lose it himself?" "Perhaps, but I think not." "Non, monsieur, I do not accuse you. But desperation, she is a motive not to be ignored." Merriweather groaned softly, burying his face once more in his hands. Poirot rose and left him, his expression unreadable. A glimpse of Drake. That evening, Poirot strolled discreetly along Albemarle Street, where Lionel Drake's shop gleamed with its polished brass sign and crystal chandeliers. Through the window, he observed Drake laughing with a wealthy client, his hands expressive, his manner smooth. Poirot watched for some minutes. He noted the sharpness of Drake's attire, the perfect cut of his suit, and yet, the cuffs, always slightly frayed. How curious, that a man so conscious of appearance neglected so small a detail. When the client departed, Drake emerged to lock the door. He spotted Poirot and smiled faintly. "Still hunting shadows, Monsieur Poirot?" he asked lightly. Poirot inclined his head. Shadows, yes. But the shadows, they tell me much. One must look where the light does not shine, Monsieur Drake. Drake laughed softly. A pity the diamond does not shine there too. He tipped his hat and walked away, leaving the faintest trace of cologne in his wake. Poirot breathed it in, his eyes narrowing. Poirot's reflections. That night, back in his rooms, Poirot sat in his armchair, the fire crackling warmly. He laid out his observations as though arranging chess pieces. Miss Hobbs, poor, yes, desperate, yes, but too timid, too open. A victim of trickery, not a cunning thief. Merriweather, financially strained, with much to gain or lose. Yet his despair was genuine. A desperate man may conceal, but he does not plant false trails. Colonel Ashworth, proud, brusque, with secrets perhaps. The umbrella troubles Poirot still. But his manner is clumsy, not artful. Lionel Drake, polished, amused, leaving perfume and frayed threads behind him. A man too at ease, too clever, and yet careless in the smallest of details. Poirot stroked his moustache. The thief, he is clever. He plants the paste diamond, he turns suspicion to the girl. Yet in so doing, he reveals his hand. To mislead is natural, but to mislead so boldly? That, it is the vanity of the criminal. Poirot's subtle trap. The next day, Poirot requested that all four suspects, Merriweather, Miss Hobbs, Colonel Ashworth, and Drake, gather once more in the jeweller's office. Inspector Graves, grumbling, also attended. Poirot stood before them, hands folded, eyes bright. My friends, we are surrounded by deception. The thief, he plants false diamonds, false evidence, false suspicion. But already, I see the truth. And soon, so shall you. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Tomorrow, at this hour, I shall reveal all. In the meantime, I make but one request, that each of you remain at liberty, but that none depart London. The Astoria Diamond, she is closer than you think. Drake chuckled softly. You make it sound like a play, Poirot. Poirot inclined his head. But of course, monsieur. Life, she is always a play. And soon we shall see who takes the final bow. Closing reflection. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered by the boarded window. He touched the paper lightly, as though feeling for something beneath. Then, satisfied, he smiled to himself. The threads, they begin to weave, he murmured. A false stone, a false suspicion, a false trail. But truth, she is never false. Tomorrow, she shall be mine. Chapter 7, The Trap tightens. The following afternoon, the air in Bond Street was cool and heavy, as if London itself held its breath. At Merriweather Company, the boarded display window loomed like a wound, its paper covering now curling faintly at the edges. Inside, Poirot had arranged the scene with careful precision. The counter had been polished, the shattered glass swept away, and a new velvet cloth laid upon the case. Atop it sat a gleaming diamond, or so it seemed. Inspector Graves stood to one side, arms folded, his expression one of skeptical impatience. Merriweather hovered near the back, wringing his hands. Colonel Ashworth leaned stiffly against his umbrella. Lionel Drake lounged with studied ease, a faint smile playing about his lips. Miss Hobbs sat pale and tense, twisting a handkerchief between her fingers. Poirot entered with measured tread, every detail immaculate, the crease of his trousers, the shine of his shoes, the flawless line of his moustache. He bowed slightly. My friends, he began, his voice calm yet commanding, I thank you for your patience. Today, the drama, she nears her conclusion. But before the curtain may rise upon the truth, I ask you to witness a small experiment. The bait. He gestured towards the diamond on the counter. It sparkled richly beneath the lamps. You see here the Astoria Diamond, returned to her place, Poirot declared. She gleams as before. Yet, let me assure you, she is not the true Astoria, but a replica prepared overnight. There was a murmur, Miss Hobbs's gasp, Merriweather's exclamation, Ashworth's grunt, and Drake's low chuckle. Poirot raised a hand. Why do I display her here, so openly? Because I wish to see what passes in your faces, in your hearts. The thief, he cannot resist. The lure of the diamond, even false, it draws him like the flame draws the moth. The first move. For some minutes, nothing happened. Poirot paced slowly, his eyes sharp and restless though his movements appeared languid. Monsieur Merriweather, he said suddenly, turning, you stand far back. Are you afraid to come near the diamond? The jeweller stammered. No, of course not. He shuffled forward reluctantly, casting a nervous glance at the glittering stone. His hands trembled as he touched the glass case. Poirot studied him, then shook his head gently. No. You fear, yes, but it is not the fear of guilt. It is the fear of loss. You, monsieur, I dismiss. Merriweather let out a breath that was half relief, half despair. The colonel's turn. Poirot's gaze shifted to Colonel Ashworth. And you, mon colonel, you clutch your umbrella as though it were a rifle. Always, the umbrella. Damp one day, dusted with glass the next. Why such an attachment? Perhaps because it has been more than a mere walking stick. Ashworth bristled. Damn it, sir, I've told you already. I set it down, nothing more. Poirot approached him delicately, eyes fixed on the umbrella. Permit me. Before Ashworth could object, Poirot gave the handle a twist. The colonel stiffened, but too late. From the hollow shaft, Poirot withdrew a folded slip of paper. He unfolded it and smiled faintly. A bill, for debts at the gaming tables. Ashworth's face flushed crimson. You had no right. Poirot bowed. I have no wish to expose your weakness, mon colonel. But it shows me one thing, you are desperate, yes, but not devious. A man who conceals debts in his umbrella is clumsy, not cunning. No, you are not my thief. Ashworth sagged slightly in relief, though his eyes burned with humiliation. The net narrows. That left two, Miss Hobbs, trembling, and Lionel Drake, smooth and smiling. Poirot turned to the girl. Mademoiselle, the pawn ticket condemned you. Then, the false diamond in your room nearly ruined you. Yet your tears, they were real, your despair genuine. And now, as you sit near the diamond, I see only fear, not temptation. No, you are not the thief. You are the victim. Miss Hobbs burst into fresh tears. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. Thank you. Poirot gave her a small, reassuring bow, then turned at last to Lionel Drake. The snare closes. Drake lounged elegantly, one arm upon the back of his chair. He smiled faintly as Poirot approached. So now it's down to me, is it? He said lightly. The rival jeweller, the obvious villain. You disappoint me, Poirot. I expected more subtlety. Poirot's moustaches twitched. Ah, but it is precisely subtlety that condemns you, monsieur. You are too clever, too mocking, too confident. You play the part of the amused onlooker, but you forget, it is vanity that betrays. Drake's smile did not falter. Words, Poirot. Only words. Where is your proof? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Proof, you ask? Very well. Allow me. The revelation. Poirot turned towards the boarded display window. He lifted the curling edge of brown paper, exposing a corner of the frame. With a delicate motion, he produced a handkerchief, and from the tiny crevice drew forth a single thread of fabric, dark, fine, unmistakably from a slute cuff. He held it up. "Monsieur Drake, this thread, she matches perfectly the frayed cuff of your coat. On the day of the theft, you leaned too close, perhaps to tamper with the case. A shard of glass caught you, and in your carelessness you left behind this trace. Later, you returned to plant the imitation diamond in Miss Hobbs's room, hoping to turn suspicion upon her. But your vanity betrayed you, the scent of your cologne clung to the counter, your thread clung to the window, and your mockery clung to every word you spoke." There was a stunned silence. Merriweather gasped, Miss Hobbs sobbed, Ashworth swore under his breath. Inspector Graves's moustache bristled triumphantly. Drake, however, merely smiled more faintly. "A thread? A whiff of cologne? That is hardly evidence." Poirot's voice sharpened. "Non, monsieur. But the diamond, she is evidence enough. You did not steal her to sell at once, no. You are too clever. You hid her, perhaps even in your own shop, waiting until suspicion cooled. But tonight, you will not sleep so well. For I know where you placed her." Drake's eyes flickered, just a fraction, just a heartbeat of unease. Poirot saw it, and his own smile widened. Poirot's final promise. Poirot turned to Inspector Graves. "You will accompany me to Monsieur Drake's premises this evening. There, I shall show you where the diamond lies. And then, Monsieur will have his proof, and Monsieur Drake will have his downfall." Graves nodded briskly, already eager. Merriweather sagged in relief, while Miss Hobbs clasped her hands as though in prayer. Drake rose gracefully, adjusting his cuff as though nothing had occurred. "You are a formidable opponent, Poirot," he said softly. "But I assure you, you will find nothing." Poirot bowed, eyes gleaming. "We shall see, monsieur. We shall see." Curtain falls. As the suspects filed out, Poirot lingered alone by the counter, gazing at the replica diamond. He touched the glass lightly, his expression thoughtful. "The net, she tightens," he murmured. "The fly, he wriggles, but already he is caught. Tomorrow, the Astoria Diamond shall shine again, and Hercule Poirot shall deliver the truth entire." The fire in his eyes burned bright. The little grey cells had done their work. Only the final act remained. Chapter 8, The Final Curtain. Evening fell upon Bond Street, the lamps glowing pale through the mist. The street, once bustling, had grown hushed, as though waiting for an unseen drama to play out. Inside Merriweather and Company, the air was taut with anticipation. Poirot had summoned all the players for one last gathering, Merriweather, pale but hopeful, Miss Hobbs, trembling with a mixture of dread and relief, Colonel Ashworth, stiff as ever, his umbrella beside him, Inspector Graves, impatient and bristling with authority. And there, seated with calm defiance, was Lionel Drake. Poirot entered at last, immaculate as always. He bowed slightly, then took his place at the head of the table. "My friends," he began, his voice low yet commanding, "the hour has come. The curtain rises, the play concludes, and the thief is unmasked. You have all suffered suspicion, some unjustly, some with reason. But tonight, Hercule Poirot shall give you clarity." He paused, letting his gaze rest on each of them. The ticking of the clock seemed thunderous in the silence. Unraveling the red herrings. Poirot began softly, almost conversationally. "First, Mademoiselle Hobbs. The pawn ticket, the false diamond found in your room, these things were designed to destroy you. But they were too neat, too perfect. They were the work of another hand, planting evidence to condemn you. Your tears, your despair, they were genuine. You are innocent." Miss Hobbs clasped her hands and wept silently. Merriweather reached across the table and patted her arm. Poirot continued, Monsieur Merriweather, you feared financial ruin, and yes, your business falters. But you are no thief. Your anxiety was too open, too uncontrolled. A guilty man does not collapse beneath the weight of worry, he conceals, he deflects. You did neither. You gambled with prestige, yes, but not with crime. Merriweather exhaled heavily, relief etched upon his face. Poirot turned to the colonel. And you, mon colonel? Your umbrella, how it puzzled me. Damp when no rain had fallen, dusted with glass, hiding your gambling debts. You are guilty, yes, but only of weakness, not of theft. You concealed your losses with clumsiness, but the Astoria Diamond requires art. And art is not your gift. Ashworth grunted, his jaw clenched, but there was relief in his eyes. Poirot let the silence build, then swung his gaze at last to Drake. The case against Drake. Which leaves us with you, Monsieur Lionel Drake. The rival jeweller, the smooth talker, the man who laughed when others wept. Always, you played the role of the amused onlooker. But vanity, Monsieur, vanity betrayed you. Drake raised a brow, smiling faintly. Vanity? Is that your grand case, Poirot? Poirot's moustache twitched. Non, monsieur, not vanity alone. The scent of your cologne lingered upon the counter, though none but the staff had leaned close. A thread from your frayed cuff lodged in the frame of the display window. Small things, yes, but it is always the small things that undo the great crime. Drake leaned back, unruffled. A thread, a whiff of perfume. Circumstantial, nothing more. Poirot lifted a finger. And yet, there is more. Who else had reason to destroy Merriweather? Who else had access to a flawless imitation stone to plant in the girl's room? Only you. Monsieur, with your trade connections and your rivalry. You sought not merely to steal, but to ruin. The hiding place. Inspector Graves stepped forward. All very fine, Poirot. But where's the diamond? You can't convict a man without the stone. Poirot smiled thinly. Ah, the diamond. Yes, she is near. Very near. He turned to Drake, his voice silk and steel. Monsieur, you did not dare sell the Astoria at once. Too distinctive, too famous. You needed to let the storm pass. So you hid it, in a place so simple no one would suspect. Poirot walked slowly to the boarded window. He tapped the frame lightly. Here. Behind the paper, inside the hollow ledge. The same place where you left your thread. I knew, when I touched the board yesterday, that it concealed more than splinters. He produced a small knife from his pocket and slid it into the narrow seam. With a neat motion, he prized open a section of the ledge. There, nestled in the dust, was a small velvet pouch. Poirot lifted it delicately, opened it, and let the room gasp as the Astoria Diamond blazed once more in the light. Voila, Poirot said softly. The Queen returns to her throne. The collapse of Drake. All eyes turned to Drake. For a heartbeat, he remained composed, lips curved in that faint mocking smile. But the facade faltered. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened, and at last he gave a low, humorless laugh. Well, Poirot, he said, his voice like iron, you've done it. I underestimated you. I thought the little Belgian would chase his own tail. But it seems the little grey cells were sharper than I credited. Graves stepped forward, snapping on his handcuffs. Lionel Drake, I arrest you for the theft of the Astoria Diamond. Drake did not resist. He merely inclined his head towards Poirot. Bravo, monsieur. But you must admit, it was a fine game. Poirot's eyes were cool. Oh, monsieur. A fine game, but a foolish one. For vanity, she is always the undoing of clever men. You planted too boldly, accused too neatly. You underestimated the power of the detail. And the detail, she is my specialty. Aftermath. As Graves led Drake away, Merriweather slumped into his chair, tears of relief on his cheeks. Poirot, you have saved me. My reputation, my business, everything. Miss Hobbs clutched Poirot's hand, whispering through her tears, I can never thank you enough, monsieur. You believed me when no one else did. Poirot patted her hand gently. Courage, mademoiselle. Truth, she is like the diamond, she may be hidden, but she does not vanish. She will always shine through. Colonel Ashworth cleared his throat awkwardly. Dashed good work, Poirot. I owe you an apology for doubting your methods. Poirot inclined his head graciously. It is nothing, mon colonel. You see, each of you played a part. Without your secrets, your fears, your weaknesses, the pattern would not have been complete. In crime, as in life, it is the psychology that matters. Always, the heart reveals what the hand tries to hide. Poirot's final word. Later, alone by the fire in his lodgings, Poirot sat back with a cup of tisane. The Astoria Diamond had been returned to its rightful place, Lionel Drake had been charged, and the world once more was set in order. He smiled softly to himself, stroking his immaculate moustache. So it ends, he murmured. The thief, he was clever. He planted evidence, he played with deception, he mocked the world. But always, it is the detail, the thread, the scent, the psychology. That is why Hercule Poirot triumphs. Not the force, not the bluster, but the little grey cells. They never lie. The fire crackled, the night deepened, and Poirot, content, closed his eyes for a moment of quiet satisfaction. The case of the Astoria Diamond was over. Justice, like the jewel itself, had been restored to its rightful brilliance.